Are you ready? You think you could tell us what to do? You think you could tell us what to wear? You think that you're better? Well, you better get ready. Bow to the masters. Break it down!
Hi, welcome to this episode of Straight Lions Talk podcast, off-season edition, your Lions Information Center. That's all we do here is talk strictly Detroit Lions football all the time, whatever it has to do with the Detroit Lions. We try to give you an updated format on the Detroit Lions on a weekly basis. Whatever it has to do Detroit Lions-wise, we want to give you guys the realistic expectations and realistic view of the Detroit Lions all the time. That's what we do here. And today we're going to be talking about Bob Quinn, the GM that was hired a couple weeks ago by the Detroit Lions. And we're also going to be talking about Jim Caldwell. We talked about both of those guys last week in our podcast. We're going to give you a little bit different view on it. The news broke last week that Jim Caldwell would be retained by the Detroit Lions for the 2016 season. And I didn't think we did a real good job explaining how we felt about it. It was kind of shocking, a little disappointing in our view, but we're going to give you a different view and a different idea of what we think really happened and what went into the thinking behind Bob Quinn's decision to retain Jim Caldwell for the 2016 season. We're also going to get into what this team could look like in the 2016 season. I think it's going to be a different team. I think some changes are going to be made. I think a lot of people think that this team is going to come back intact the way it was in 2015. And for the most part, this could look like a really different team going into next season if Bob Quinn makes radical changes. So we'll get into that. We'll also might talk a little draft if we have time. But I'd first like to start by thanking you guys, the fans, for everything you've done for us. Everything this year has happened because of you guys. The podcast, you guys getting it out to your friends, family, Lions fans, co-workers, whoever it may be. You guys have done a great job by doing that. And we encourage you guys to keep doing that. Please do it. You guys have been phenomenal. So if you guys want to follow us, as you know, you can follow us on Twitter at STR Lions Talk. You can follow us on YouTube channel, STR Lions Talk. You can follow us on iTunes now, STR Lions Talk Podcast. That's always the address. If you guys need to follow us, that's where we're at. We just were approved on iTunes, so please subscribe to iTunes. Give us a rating. We want to be a top 300 show at this time next year. We can only do that with you, the Lions fans. That's the only way this is going to be possible, by you guys sending it out to fellow Lions fans, fellow co-workers, people that believe and want to believe, or people that maybe don't believe so much in the Detroit Lions. That's what this show is for, to get those people to believe again. So please send it out to those people. Keep retweeting it. Keep sending it out however you have to, whatever source of social media, Facebook, whatever it is, send it out. We're working on a Facebook page currently. We're working on a website, so those changes are happening in the offseason. Big things have happened. Another big thing that's happened is we've been picked up by NFL Draft Bible. We're a Lions insider for them. It's an incredible site. As Detroit Lions fans, as you know, we are well in tune with the NFL Draft, especially the last 14 out of 16 seasons. We haven't been in the playoffs, so that's what we focus our offseason minds on. Is the NFL Draft. That's what we covet, because that's what we've known as Lions fans for so many years, is the NFL Draft. And if you want to be a smarter fan, a better fan, we have some of the smartest fans, some of the most educated fans when it comes to player personnel decisions, because we've seen so many of them as Detroit Lions fans. But if you guys want to be well-informed and ahead of everybody else, go to NFL Draft Bible. You can get 30 free days right now if you type in the promo code RIC 2015. You get 30 free days. Check it out. It's incredible. It'll make you a smarter fan. They cover a variety, thousands of players, whether it's small school, big school, top name, low name, whatever it is. They give you a realistic view on all of these players, not just the mumbo jumbo. A written review of every player, interviews, tons of stuff. Just go to their website. It's incredible. We appreciate them. We look forward to working with them for a long time. Today we're going to be talking about, like I said, Bob Quinn. He took over as the Lions GM a couple weeks ago. He's made some decisions. Some we've liked, some we haven't liked. But the biggest decision he made was going with Jim Caldwell. And we'll get into that in just a minute. But some of the uphill battles Bob Quinn is fighting in this first-time GM role is he's coming to an organization that he chose to come to as much as we chose him to come to the Detroit Lions. An organization, like I said, in the last 16 years has not made the playoffs 14 of those 16 years. This is an organization that has seen as much failure as he's seen winning in his 16 years prior to coming to the Detroit Lions with the New England Patriots. Remember, he came into the NFL to the New England Patriots and has seen nothing but success in his time as a New England Patriot. And he's come to an organization that's seen nothing but failure time after time after time again. Whether we were supposed to be really good, really bad, really average, it always seems to go the opposite way. If we're supposed to be good, we're bad. If we're bad, we get a little bit better. If we're average, we just average, or we give you a glimpse of hope that we could be something the next year, and then turns into failure. It's such a roller coaster being a Detroit Lions fan. It has been that way ever since I've been a Detroit Lions fan. That goes back to the early 90s. And it's been that way for a lot of you that's been fans longer than that. The up and down, the high draft picks, the superstars that have come through, the superstars that have retired, the players that have been injured, the players that have left, all the tumultuous things that have happened to the Detroit Lions over the years, the Hail Mary games, the Sterling Sharp reception from Brett Favre to beat us in the playoffs. Everything that's happened to Detroit Lions is just a culmination of everything bottled into one, and all the frustration has been vented this year due to the expectations coming into this season with what we thought was going to be the perennial coach, the coach that was going to take this organization to a professional and educated and successful platform in the NFL, has turned into a pile of crap in the 2015 season with the 1-7 start, the inconsistencies on offense and defense, the stubbornness and to make changes to his staff, whatever it was this season, Bob Quinn has chose to stay with or come to the Detroit Lions and try to take this organization to the heights that the New England Patriots had seen over the past few years. He's 39 years old, a lot of fight. I think he's an incredible choice, like we talked about last week. Remember, this is an organization he's coming to in the last 15 years. Remember, he was with the New England Patriots 16 years prior to coming to the Detroit Lions. In the last 15 years, the Detroit Lions have had 8 head coaches and 5 GMs. So that's not something you go into as a 39-year-old kid thinking, boy, I have really hit the lottery here for franchises in the NFL. I mean, realistically, if you're looking at it, the only one worse than us right now is the Cleveland Browns. And the only reason we look better is we have a quarterback. They don't. Our roster looks better. They're a mess internally, as we are, and we have been over the last 15 years. It started more so with the Matt Millen era, and it never changed, and we never got out of the Matt Millen era all this time, even after firing Matt Millen. But with Bob Quinn on the job, a lot of Lions fans, like we talked about last week, were a little skeptical of the decision to hire Bob Quinn, didn't think we did an adequate job of pursuing other candidates for the GM position. A lot of people wanted Seattle's Trent Kitchener to at least get an interview. That did not happen. We ended up hiring Bob Quinn and canceled the interview with Kitchener before it could happen. Now, me personally, I don't mind it. If you know the guy you want, then go after him. If he blew you away in both interviews, then go after him. And that's what the Detroit Lions did. And you can't argue with the success he had in New England, the way he worked his way up through every job. He cut his teeth from the bottom up. He was one of the only front office people allowed in the draft room with Bill Belichick, so he got to see how those decisions were made, put his input in, whether Bill Belichick went for it, whether he didn't go for it, because Bill Belichick ultimately had final say with the New England Patriots and still does. And how is that going to be in Detroit? How many people are going to be in that room? It's things we're going to find out with Quinn. But so far, with Quinn on the job, I really like the decisions he's made at this point. He's weeded out a lot of the long-time people that have kind of maybe been coasting by the last few years in their positions with the Detroit Lions. You know, with Matt Millen being fired and Martin Mayhew taking over, Martin Mayhew didn't make any changes to the management side of the Detroit Lions in the front office. He didn't make any changes to the scouting department. he just kind of left everything intact the way it was and maybe changed the philosophy just a little bit and the way he wanted to do things. Now, I will say Mayhew drafted 100% better than Matt Millen. I mean, people can dog Mayhew's drafts. At least I had an idea of what he was doing. His perspective didn't change. His philosophies didn't change year to year. He all but drafted the same way every year. And if you go back and really look at those drafts, you can understand what he was trying to accomplish at the time and the position the Detroit Lions were in at those times. So I understand it. Last year was a good indicator of that. He was trying to upgrade the offensive line and establish more of a running game with the Detroit Lions. And it just didn't happen that way. We're one of the worst rushing teams. You can blame Lombardi, however you want to blame it, Caldwell, whatever. That's in the past. But you can at least understand what Mayhew was doing over Millen. Where now with Quinn, I really see what he's doing. He is weeding out the Detroit Lions from the internal organ of the Lions organization. He's done what I think is a phenomenal job at making small moves I think are going to turn out to be big moves for the Detroit Lions in the future. One of his first moves as a GM has been to fire Scott McEwen after 29 seasons with the team. He was the director of player person, or the person, He was a longtime head scout for the Detroit Lions in the player personnel department. A move that really needed to be made internally for the Detroit Lions. This is one of those instances that you have to get the old guard out and bring in someone you trust, someone that can tell you you're wrong. A lot of times people that are in a position of power don't have someone that will tell them when they're doing something wrong, because everybody makes mistakes and everyone needs someone in that role that will tell them when they're making a mistake. And I think, in my personal opinion, Quinn did that by hiring Kyle O'Brien as the director of player personnel for the Detroit Lions, a role Scott McEwen previously held, where McEwen didn't have a relationship with Quinn and probably didn't have the same philosophies on how to build an organization, what he was looking for in players, or maybe he just didn't really mesh with McEwen very well. So I like the move. I like that he did this. He took away a guy that someone coming in might have a soft heart for. He did not. He cut him loose and moved on into the new era. Now, Kyle O'Brien was formerly with the New England Patriots. Him and Quinn came in together to the New England Patriots at the same time. O'Brien moved on to the Chiefs. He moved on to the Jacksonville Jaguars. He worked with Scott Pioli. So it's basically he's always been with the Patriot system, and he's brought some of that Patriot philosophy to the Jacksonville Jaguars, which is a team I personally think has done a very good job drafting and acquiring free agents and building this team that was at least an offensive juggernaut this season and played some pretty competitive games for a team that's very young and still finding its way in the NFL on how to win with a young quarterback. I really like the direction of the Jacksonville Jaguars team. I like some of the players they've drafted over the years. They seem like they've had a lot of success in the draft in the late rounds as well as the early rounds. So hiring O'Brien with that to mesh with Quinn, two people that have the same philosophies and someone that he trusts to be his second in command with the Detroit Lions or front office organization, I really like this move from O'Brien. I think it showed leadership. I think it was a well-calculated move. I like that he didn't go in and just start firing people left and right without getting to know them. It sounds like he's went through a thorough interview process with a lot of people, including Austin, including Cooter, including Jim Caldwell, McEwen, a variety. I think he met with Matthew Stafford last week. A lot of different people he's met with and talked with. I like his due diligence so far with the Detroit Lions in only a short time on the job. It's something we really haven't seen in a long time. I mean, Matt Millen came in and kind of blew the whole thing up, but remember, McEwen was there before Matt Millen, and he was there after Matt Millen, where now it's going to be O'Brien. So really, this draft is going to be something we have never seen before. A lot of different philosophies, different player profiles. A lot of things are going to change this offseason. It's exciting. Quinn also fired VP of Operations, a longtime fixture, another guy that was with the Detroit Lions for a decade, Cedric Saunders. He fired him this week. I think it was yesterday he actually fired him. So another move, another guy that was entrenched with the Detroit Lions organization for a long time. A lot of bad ideology, a lot of bad things have happened in that time, and a lot of people that were probably pretty ingrained in their jobs and didn't think anything was going to happen to them, they maybe didn't put forth the work that had to be done in those positions. Now, I'm only speaking from my perspective. I don't know this for a fact. On any of these guys, I don't know this for a fact. I don't know that McEwen wasn't doing his work well. I don't know if Saunders was. But the fact of the matter is he got rid of what I would say is dead weight. He's bringing in new, fresh blood with new ideas, people that maybe challenge Quinn in certain moments. And it sounds to me like Quinn has an open mind. He's not just a dictator, but he is a very good leader in the way he listens, does his homework, and tries to get to the bottom of the situation at his time frame, not in someone else's. He just makes his decision when he knows his decision needs to be made. He doesn't do it on someone else's, us, the fans, the media, the players, whoever it may be. He makes his decisions for himself and what's best for the Detroit Lions organization. That's what I've seen so far, and that's where I think this is going. Like we talked about last week, I have a calm about this. I like the direction this is going for the Detroit Lions. He also fired the conditioning coach this last week, the strength and conditioning coach. I think that's a good move. It's a move that you don't really see a lot of, but this is a guy that had been there 15 years again. So he's fired guys with 29 years experience, 15 years experience, and 10 years experience. These are things that needed to happen for the Detroit Lions in this offseason. And maybe these moves are bigger. In our opinion, we do think these moves are bigger than firing just Jim Caldwell and his staff. The underlying people you don't see sometimes make the difference in the success that the football team has on the field. And I think that's true in a lot of organizations. The Packers, the Ravens, the Steelers, the Patriots. You know, teams like that have a lot of success year after year after year. Like we talked about, stability from the top. And I think he's trying to put that into effect now and currently. The Detroit Lions have been a fairly healthy team over the last few years. But I'm a little disappointed at how our offensive line gets bullied around a lot. We don't have guys that can stand guys up, that can push guys back. You know, the pushback guys, when we need that 3 yards, are we a strong enough, physically, mental, tough enough team to do those things? And I think he's going to bring in people to get us more physically tough and more mentally tough as well going forward for the Detroit Lions. I just love how this is going, that small internal moves the Detroit Lions are making. This is where I think the metal meets the meat right here. I love it. I love the idea of it. I like what he's doing. And I like all the moves he's made so far, including keeping Jim Caldwell. Last week, I was 50-50 on it. I understood why he kept him, and I understood why he should have been fired. We all know the faults of Jim Caldwell. We're not going to get into that. We're going to talk about why we think Quinn kept Jim Caldwell and what I think potentially could be one of the biggest moves, whether Caldwell's here next year or the year after, or if he is or isn't the long-term solution or coach for the Detroit Lions going forward in the Bob Quinn era of the Detroit Lions. I like the move for this fact. Like we just talked about, Quinn got rid of McEwen, the strength and conditioning coach, Cedric Saunders, guys that had 29, 15, and 10 years experience. He didn't get rid of Jim Caldwell, which a lot of people wanted him to, including us. We wanted Jim Caldwell gone. We thought he would be gone. We thought Quinn would want to make his own mistakes. That's the thing I don't think he did here. I don't think he's made a mistake when looking at it from this perspective. And that is, he shook up the organization, but he's shaking up the organization in a way that isn't affecting the players and making the players question what the heck is going on in Detroit again. There is stability within the coaching staff, a coaching staff that the players love, a coaching staff that Martha Ford loves, and a coach that is well respected around the league. Now, we said last week that we thought Jim Caldwell would deserve to be on a team somewhere. We think he deserves to be in the NFL as a coach in some capacity. Ultimately, I think his best role is as an assistant head coach. I think that would be the perfect role for him to mitigate the small turmoils that pop up during a season, the player disputes, the player arguments, the player problems. I think he's good at mediating all that stuff internally for an organization. I think he's good with people. He's well-read. He's well-spoken. And I just think ultimately that's where his position lies. But unfortunately, that's not for us. That he is our head coach, so we don't get that opportunity to demote him down to assistant head coach and hire someone else. That just doesn't work. We all know that. But keeping him, I think, is going to be a good thing going forward. I never thought in 1,000 years you'd hear I would say that. I've said it to some friends, and they look at me like I'm crazy. But the small things Quinn has done on the inside of the organization, I think, is going to lead to big things for the team and the organization in the future. And I don't think Quinn's done. I think some things are going to happen to the coaching staff, but he's doing it in a way that isn't offensive to everybody, but is still authoritative and still making his mark. But he's making well-calculated moves. He's just not making moves to make moves. He's thinking about it. He's doing his homework. He's sitting down and talking to people he respects, people like Kyle O'Brien, stuff like that. You know, someone that can say, hey, this is a bad move. This is a good move. Let's talk about it. Those are the things the Detroit Lions have not had. They've always had someone as a GM, whether it was Millen, who was more the focal point of the team, where I don't think Quinn is trying to be the focal point of the team. And you don't want your GM to be the focal point of the team. That's what killed the relationship with Jim Harbaugh and whoever the heck the GM is at San Francisco. I know who he is. I just can't think of him right now, and I honestly don't care. But Trent Baalke. Trent Baalke is basically the figurehead of the San Francisco organization. He wants to be in that role. He wants to be the man out front. He wants to be everyone to know he made this decision. Even hiring Chip Kelly, he wants to be the man. You hear Trent Baalke named with the head coach. Jim Harbaugh and Trent Baalke. Trent Baalke and Jim Harbaugh. Trent Baalke and Chip Kelly. You know, you hear those names, that name all the time, and I don't think Quinn wants to hear that. I don't think it wants to be Bob Quinn and Jim Caldwell. I think he just wants it to be Jim Caldwell or just the Detroit Lions as an organization. Just like it's New England. You know, you think of New England Patriots, you think of Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, Kraft. That's what you think of. But ultimately you think New England Patriots, oh, they're going to be good. But I think that's what Quinn is trying to do with the Detroit Lions, and I like the move of keeping Caldwell now that I've seen kind of the method to the madness. He did not shake up things internally with the team. He shook up things internally with the organization, and that's what I like. That's where I kind of think he has made a very good move, at least initially, with the Detroit Lions. Now, could Caldwell fall flat on his face? Oh, yeah. We know all the things that he's done wrong, the bad coaching decisions, the in-game management stuff, all that. And I don't think that's just going to improve because Quinn's there. Because let's remember, Quinn is not going to go down and do X's and O's and all that. He's going to leave that up to the coaching staff. That's their job. He might give his influence on where he would like this team to go and certain things he'd like this team to showcase on the field, whether that's maybe go a little more hurry up. Hey, we'd like to be a little more aggressive on defense. We're going to try to draft players for that, perspective. But also by sitting down with Bob Quinn sitting down with Jim Caldwell 4 times is what the rumor was. He sat down 4 individual times with Jim Caldwell for a 3 hours each time. I think, and I made this mistake, I believe too, that people thought when he said our philosophies need to mesh, I think I took it as X and O philosophies need to mesh. Whether, Quinn's going to come in and say, hey, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this on X and O's, and Caldwell's going to say, I like to do this and this, so it's not going to mesh. I think after thinking about it for a week, and I probably should have done this before reacting to it when the news broke, is when Quinn sat down with Caldwell, he wanted to sit down and see how the man himself and what his philosophies were, maybe not so much just in football, in life, on what he thought and how an organization should be built. That's Caldwell. And whether those philosophies and ideologies were going to mesh. And maybe Quinn looked at the direction that Caldwell has taken the team since he had gotten to Detroit. And maybe when Caldwell explained what he was trying to do since he's gotten to Detroit, maybe those philosophies and ideologies mesh. And maybe that's what Quinn was referring to in his press conference he needs the coach and GM to have the same ideologies and same philosophies. And I took it more as an X and O side and I shouldn't have. I should have taken it from the broad perspective of both what Caldwell has been trying to do since he's gotten to Detroit and what he views an organization to look like, attitude-wise, X and O-wise, anything internal with the organization. I think that's where he was trying to tell people what he was thinking with Jim Caldwell and what he needed to see in Jim Caldwell to retain him as head coach. And I believe he saw those things, more what the man Jim Caldwell is about and his views on things than the X's and O's of Jim Caldwell, because the X's and O's can be changed easier than the man himself, whether it's Caldwell, whether it's Josh McDaniels, or Patricia, whatever it is, whoever it is. I think those things can be changed easier, X and O's can be, than the man himself and what his core values are. And I think that's what Quinn wanted to find out about Caldwell. And by talking to people throughout the NFL, people that know Caldwell, people that Quinn respects, Martha Ford, the Fords, and the way people and the players that played before him talked about Jim Caldwell in such a glowing light, I think ultimately had a lot to do with the decision. And then sitting down and talking to Jim Caldwell and understanding the philosophies of Jim Caldwell and what makes Jim Caldwell tick and how he wanted the organization to be in his view and what he was trying to do when he got here with the Detroit Lions, I think ultimately gave Quinn enough satisfaction and enough calm that he wanted to keep Jim Caldwell on for the 2016 season. Now, I think it's going to work out. I really like it because I like what Quinn has done in the internal structure of the Detroit Lions. And I think more moves are coming. I think they're slow. I think they're well thought out moves for the Lions, like we talked about. I really like it. I like what Quinn's doing. It's not groundbreaking stuff. It's not stuff that makes national news. It's not stuff that makes SportsCenter or even NFL Network. It's just slow stuff that makes Twitter news. It makes local media news. It makes Bleacher Report news for your team's page, stuff like that. Small moves. Remember, sometimes the small victories are what win the war, and I think that's what Quinn's ultimately trying to do here. But also, some of the decisions Quinn's going to have to make outside of the organization, from the inside of the organization, and whether it's the coaching staff, whatever, the players. The players are what win games. Players win games. Coaches just coach. Players win games because coaches give you the information to take onto the field, and it's the player's responsibility to take that information and go out and be successful with the information that is given to them from their coaching staff, from their coaches, whoever it is. That's what they need to do to be successful. And this is a team, that was expected a lot of in the 2015 season. This is a team that Bob Quinn took over that people thought next year is going to look the same as it did in 2015 for the 2016 season, and I don't think it's going to. Speaking of decisions for Bob Quinn, he's going to have a lot of them this offseason. Unrestricted free agents. Let me just name off a few names for you here. Tier Whitehead, Travis Lewis, Jason Jones, Cujo, Daryl Tapp, Corey Wooten, Haloti Ngata, Tyron Walker, Manny Ramirez, James Ahedabone, Isa Abdul Caduce, Josh Wilson, Lance Moore, Dan Orlowski, Bear Pasco. All these guys are unrestricted free agents. These are guys that we need to sign. These are guys, look how many guys are on the defense. Most of those are defensive guys. Look how much different our defense could look. Tier Whitehead, ample playing time this year. Travis Lewis, great special teams guy. Jason Jones had a great year. Great defensive lineman in general. Good on the end, good in the middle of the defense, versatile, had a great season. He's able to hold the edge, play the run, able to rush the passer at times. Tyron Walker, 26 years old, had a brutal knee injury on a cheap shot early in the season. Manny Ramirez, veteran offensive lineman, can play a variety of positions on the offensive line, right tackle, guard, center, things like that. James Ahedabone, if it was 20 years ago, he's a great player in the run game. He has his moments where he's useful, but ultimately that isn't one of my big concerns on coming back. Lance Moore, who was starting to get a relationship with Matthew Stafford and understand how this offense wanted to utilize him. Veteran receiver that could possibly be utilized in some way, shape, or form if he comes back at the right price. I personally like TJ Jones, but got a little bit of a TJ Jones crush. Dan Orlowski, I'm not really that I really don't care if Dan Orlovsky comes back. Actually, I don't want Dan Orlovsky to come back. But Isa Caduce, a great player, 26 years old, really started to improve, really accelerated his game once he became the full-time starter, stepped up, good in the pass defense, understands the defense, understands how the Lions and how the coaching staff want to use him and what his role is with the Detroit Lions. Someone that would be great to come back for the Detroit Lions. Like I said, you could draft someone maybe possibly in the draft later rounds to develop behind him for more depth. But ultimately, he played very well in his time starting with the Detroit Lions. Haloti Ngata, a player we traded for in the offseason that was on a one-year deal. Could he possibly go back to Baltimore? I wouldn't have a problem re-signing Haloti Ngata, but as long as it was an age-appropriate contract with the production he's given us now. I do not want to just sign him for huge money. But look at those names. Darryl Tapp, who has moments of being, adequate. And also with the players that we possibly could cut, and a lot of people expect us to get rid of. So you're talking Brandon Pettigrew, Riley Reif, Calvin Johnson could possibly retire, Stephen Tulloch, Joique Bell. These are all players that could be on the bubble of being cut by the Detroit Lions and us moving on. Just whether it's cap room, whether it's production. I mean, Brandon Pettigrew, what do you have, like 10 catches this year? And he's one of the top 15 paid tight ends. I doubt he's back with the Lions. Joique Bell, will he be back? Showed a little wear on the tires. Riley Reif, $8 million, nothing against the cap. Are we going to keep him? Stephen Tulloch, the leading tackler for the team, but was exposed a lot of times in the passing game. Are we going to keep him? Calvin Johnson, is he going to retire? Is he going to stay? That would gain us $12 million in cap space, but cost us $11 million against the cap. A lot of decisions. So let me go through that one more time. These are the players of note that could really change the look of this team. Brandon Pettigrew, Riley Reif, Joique Bell, Calvin Johnson, if he retires, Stephen Tulloch, Tier Whitehead, Travis Lewis, Jason Jones, Haloti Ngata, Maynard Ramirez, Isa Caduce. And I would say those are the most significant players. That's 11 players. That's one side of the ball if you want to look at it this way. I know there's offense and defensive guys mixed in there, but that's one side of the ball. 11 players that played substantial time and were supposed to be key factors for the Detroit Lions in the 2015 season and difference makers in those roles they were playing that are going to be possibly gone. And this could be, like I said before, these are decisions Quinn's going to have to make in the offseason. I don't think these are things people are looking at right now, how different this team could look overall going into the 2016 season. Which brings up, was it a good time to get a new coach? With basically, people said this team needs to be blown up. And I looked at it as this team needs to be tinkered with and not blown up. I don't think Quinn will ever blow this team up and start over from scratch. I think he's going to copy the Patriot model, have a core set of players that he builds around, and quarterback's going to be number one, and I believe we have that quarterback. We have a top 10 quarterback that could be on the cusp of something great with Jim Bob Cooter being retained and being able to figure out Stafford, as we all saw at the last few games of the year, and the production Matthew Stafford was able to produce under Jim Bob Cooter. I don't see Quinn ever doing that because the Patriots never did that. Think about it. The Patriots never had rebuilt and gutted their team. They've changed over and turned over a lot of players, but they've never totally rebuilt their team. They've always just built, made changes here and there to keep themselves competitive. I see the Lions doing that going forward, whether we do get rid of all 11 of the players I've mentioned or we retain half. But I doubt all 11 are going to be back. Changes are going to be made, and this team's going to look a lot different, especially on the defensive side of the ball. The thing is, think about it. The only linebacker coming back if Tier Whitehead doesn't come or doesn't re-sign is going to be DeAndre Levy. Defensive line-wise, it could be just Ezekiel Ansah on that defensive line that's left. But the secondary seems to be sound. We could lose Caduce, but we'd have Quinn. We'd have now Nevin Lawson. We have Darius Slay. We'd have Quandre Diggs, who stepped up big. I think Terrell Austin's done a phenomenal job coaching up the defensive backs, a position he was very, very good at with the Baltimore Ravens. That the reason he got the defensive job with the Detroit Lions and why he was so well respected around the NFL was his ability to develop defensive backs for the Baltimore Ravens, and now you can see what he's done for the Detroit Lions, taking Kudus, a player that kind of bounced around the league a little bit, and the success he's had, taking Quandre Diggs, a 6th-round player, and sharpening up his skill set, and I think he'll see improvement with that in the offseason, especially with Austin being retained and not getting a head coaching job this offseason. I think that's a bonus, another plus, another feather in the cap, a feather in the helmet of the Detroit Lions for the 2016 season, keeping this coaching staff together, keeping the continuity together for the Detroit Lions. So the decisions Quinn is going to have to make, we need to get stronger up the middle. This is a position where I don't think Tulloch's coming back. He was exposed too much. I don't think Rasheed Mathis is coming back. He was exposed too much. Is Kyle Van Noy going to step up and become the player we all hoped he would be? A player I was so excited the Detroit Lions drafted. Can he show that level of talent that we thought he had in the 2016 season? Is his role going to change? Is he become an outside guy and take Tier Whitehead's spot? Is he going to become the inside guy? What's he going to do? It's hard to see where this team is going to go and what the moves are going to be. But under Quinn so far, we can see that a lot of these moves he's made have been well calculated, whether it's internally, with the coaching staff, whatever it is something I think he's going to think about. I believe all these players are being evaluated as we speak. Nothing's going to be a willy-nilly decision, and you can count on one thing not happening under Quinn's watch is we will not overpay for players like Haloti Ngata for past performances, or any free agent for that matter. We are going to pay what the market is for a player in whatever position he's in, age-wise in the NFL or production-wise in the NFL. We're not going to overpay for talent like we did in the years past. And that includes Calvin Johnson. I really think Quinn could care less if Calvin Johnson comes back one way or the other. I think he'd rather have him, but if he doesn't have him, I don't think he's going to lose any sleep over it and feel like the season's at a total loss without Calvin Johnson. Remember, an organization that's top receiver is Julian Edelman, and prior to that was Wes Welker, 2 slot receivers that run over the middle, along with Rob Gronkowski, a tight end. So they don't really value the outside threat receiver. And are we going to? I guess we'll find out. Is Calvin Johnson going to want to come back after he sees the moves being made and sees how this team is being built and the success that may follow from this change in GM and philosophy going forward? I ultimately think that's what's going to happen. I expect Calvin Johnson back in the 2016 season with the Detroit Lions. I could see him re-signing and restructuring his deal because I don't think Quinn is going to want to have a player that's on the fence every year, whether he's going to come back depending on what moves are made with the Detroit Lions. I don't think he wants that knife or gun to his head every year. But one of the moves Quinn has made in the offseason, his first acquisition as a Detroit Lion, he picked up a receiver from Emporia State. Don't get too excited, guys. Now look at his name's Willis. I lost his first name here. Yeah, that's my bad. It didn't print right. Anyway, his last name's Willis. 5'9", 175 pounds. As we said, played football at Emporia State. Recorded 56 receptions, 757 yards, averaged about 13.5 yards, and had 6 touchdowns in 2014. He caught as a junior, he caught 45 passes for 911 yards and 10 touchdowns. And he was, at his pro day, he recorded a 4.3 yard, jeez, Pete, I am just screwing this up. Okay, let me start over with that. On his pro day, he recorded a 4.340 time, a 40-inch vertical leap. He bench pressed 225 pounds 21 times. He signed with the Oakland Raiders as an unrestricted free agent, went to the Buffalo Bills, and his season ended in preseason with a concussion and was cut by the Bills later on. That was Quinn's first signing as a Detroit Lion. Now, who does this player resemble? 5'9", 175 pounds. Kind of sounds like a Danny Amendola, Wes Welker / Julian Edelman type guy. Is this where this offense is going? Are we going to try to get the guy to get quick on the inside? Someone like a Danny Amendola that can get quick on you, great in small spaces, can run that Yeah, that route. I'm not having a good moment here. That dig route or be a threat over the middle of the field with the offense for the Detroit Lions in the 2016 season. Geez, I butchered that really bad. That was his first move. I think he's going to copy a lot of the Patriots model here. Why wouldn't he? And another player you guys have to keep your eye on in the NFL draft is a guy by the name of Reggie Ragland out of the University of Alabama, inside linebacker. He fits the mold of a Detroit Lions, hopefully a Detroit Lions player. He fits the mold of a New England Patriot linebacker. Big, tall, physical, thick linebacker. That's what the New England Patriots have always drafted, a player in that model, Brandon Spikes, a guy like that to play that role, big physical guy that can attack those A-gaps. Another guy to look out for is Andrew Billings going into the draft. Second round, kid out of Baylor, I think he'd probably be there in the second round. I think he'd be a great choice for the Detroit Lions. Like we talked about, I think the Detroit Lions need to get that middle presence on their defense. That interior middle is so key to a defense to be able to collapse that pocket, to be able to contain the run, to be able to push everything to the outside. And I think Ragland and Andrew Billings early on are the two picks for us in the upcoming draft. That's an early draft thing for us. We'll get more into it when the draft comes around. But with all these things being said and everything we've talked about today and the way I botched up the first signing for the Detroit Lions for the Willis kid that didn't print his first name, and I can't think of it off the top of my head, I'd like to end with this, with all the question marks the Detroit Lions have going in, of guys to extend, guys to re-sign, digging deeper into the Lions organization, the changes that may come with that, digging into the last two seasons, something Quinn's going to have to do. Why were we 11-5 one year and then 7-9? Are we an organization that's hanging a banner for a 6-2 finish? Because I think that's what ultimately got Jim Caldwell his job back for the 2016 season. If it starts out 6-2 and ends 1-7, Jim Caldwell's not with us. So that saved Jim Caldwell, and we did beat teams we should beat, but before any of that happens and before any decisions can be made on whether players should be extended, players should be kept, and what free agents to sign, Quinn's going to have to evaluate and decipher what are the internal problems, what are the player problems, what are the issues of this organization for the Detroit Lions. Is it a talent gap or is it an effort gap? These are the questions Quinn's going to have to answer for the Detroit Lions going into the 2016 season. And for us here at Straight Lions Talk, we feel he's done that so far. We like the moves he's made so far. I even like the little receiver Willis that he just signed. So I like everything he's done. He's made small, subtle moves, but most of the moves he's made has been internal. And I think that's where it starts. We've talked about 100 times we need leadership from the top. And I think Quinn's starting to bring that in a slow, thought-out way, just not reactionary. He's doing it in a well-calculated manner, I think is going to benefit the Detroit Lions in the 2016 season and going forward. Until next week, guys, we'd like to thank all of you for listening. Please, like we said before, pass this along to all your friends, all your family, all Lions fans. Anyone you see on Twitter that's a Lions fan, go ahead and send it to them. You see them on Facebook, send them this podcast. We'd like to thank everybody. Like I said before, if you want to follow us, you can always follow us at STR Lions Talk Podcast on Twitter, on YouTube, STR Lions Talk channel, on iTunes now, STR Lions Talk Podcast. Please subscribe to us, give us a rating. Like we said, we want to be a top 300 show by the end or by the beginning of the next year at this time. We want to be a top 300 show. So please follow us on whatever source of social media you have. Please follow us, send our show out. We really appreciate it. Until next time, guys, we'll see ya.